Hello and welcome to a TalkingPointz live stream. I'm with Dave Danto. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
Um,
Well, greetings from an early morning here in Las Vegas.
Early morning in Las Vegas. Are you sure you're in Las Vegas? Can you prove it to us?
You wouldn't have that on a
Yeah,
hotel
yeah.
room wall unless you're in Vegas.
All right. Well, in fact, I think you should do that the whole time. Just kind of lean over the whole time. That's kind of not bad. But
Can also pick up the
you
camera and
are at.
like show you the strip out the window, but that's
There you go.
not
Nice.
necessarily the best thing to do.
So you are at Infocom. I was there last year. I'm not there this year. I was at last year. It was in was it Orlando? Was
Orlando.
it
It goes Orlando, Vegas every other year right now.
okay. So it's a big conference. Why don't you kind of give an introduction to people who don't know what Infocom is? What is Infocom?
Well, Infocom was originally had a lot of other names, ICIA and some other things, but it's for the AV to a certain extent now collaboration, but for that audiovisual experience industry, which now cuts across many different things. It cuts across unified communications, it cuts across display, it cuts across digital signage. It is the largest AV show in the U.S. Every year. ISE, which is done in conjunction with Avixa, who's running Infocom right now, is slightly larger, and that takes place, in Europe every year.
Yeah, because someone like myself, I think of AV as meeting rooms, but actually AV is a much bigger category, and Infocom is a much bigger conference. In fact, if anything, meeting rooms have kind of invaded that conference.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're there looking at both meeting rooms and at general AV stuff in general as well. Now, your prediction, as I recall, a few weeks ago when we were talking about you going to this event, you predicted to see a sea of video bars. Was that an accurate prediction?
Yeah, every company that's in the unified communication and collaboration space, for the most part, has now got their own video bar out there. They're all extremely different. I don't know if I'm going to get to test all of them, but I've tested a lot of them. Some are USB pass-through bars for BYOD devices. Some have Android operating systems built in. There's a large gamut of what the differentiators are, and it's really being sold on differentiator. And also, some of the companies that are the ODMs that are actually building these bars for other firms that are white labeling it have now come to market with their own product. If we're making it for somebody else, we might as well sell a few of them as well. So it's a very
Uh,
saturated market.
Now, as I recall, the original video bar, I guess there's probably going to be some debate about this, but the original video bar that broke through was probably the Meetup from Logitech, and now they're there with the Meetup too, by the way. But I was going to say the challenge of the video bar that was so cutting edge was speakers inherently vibrate. That's the way they work, and cameras don't like vibration, and so trying to put both of these in the same box was the original challenge, which apparently has now become table stakes, and a lot of vendors have figured that out. Now, you mentioned Android. This seems to be Android seems to be creeping in more and more into our meeting rooms. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, sure. I mean, there are still a number of companies that are producing USB peripheral type devices that don't have Android operating systems. But a lot of the organizations that I spoke with, Barco is one of them, and we'll have to talk about some of their announcements. Um, uh, um, uh, D10 has another one that we have to talk about as well. But a lot of the devices are now building themselves on this Android operating system and trying to decide whether or not to go with the standard Android 11, 12, whatever the current build is, whether they're going to get on board with the Microsoft MDEP, the Microsoft version of Android that's in the process of coming to market. We've been talking about and around that for 2 years, and now we've got some stories to tell about it. So we're going to start to see more and more of this, and people have to figure out how this will all work. It's interesting. The only people that aren't doing that exactly are Cisco, that are building it on their own OS platform and putting it in a shell inside, so you can switch back and forth. So they can switch between whatever versions of Android that they would like to, and their own system, no matter how it changes.
Well, let's go through some of the. I'm going to prompt you on some vendors, but before I prompt you through some vendors, What would you say are some of the big announcements that come right to top of mind? Because I know you probably don't have your notes in front of you. So what stands out?
Well, a few things. First of all, in the way of impressions, you would expect this as an industry conference to be attending in 2024 to be all about AI. And if you go to the sessions, it's all about AI. And I don't want to discount that there's some very valuable learning opportunities about how to work with large language models and what the issues are around security that I participated in with a couple of other analysts. And those are good things. But if you go to the show floor, as opposed to the ones that we've been to so far this year, you're not seeing a lot of AI bolt-ons and Scotch tape to the vendors' products and booths. What you're really seeing are people showing their wares in a very high quality thing. If they talk about AI a little bit, maybe, but it's not this pervasive thing on the exhibit floor that we've seen so far. So that's one of the big things that surprised me about coming to the
Well,
show. It is.
it's interesting the way because when you say that, it kind of makes sense to me because right now the buzz is generative AI, where it's creating content. But the AI that we've seen in the video space has largely been invisible, right? It's improved audio. You and I have different backgrounds right now. Mine's a virtual background. Yours is a Vegas background. But but a lot of AI in the media space is intended to be invisible, and so maybe your point is actually confirmation that the AI is there, but it's just invisible, which is where it
It
should be.
is, but the truth of the matter is that's the weird where it's been all along. You've had this huge hype train coming up of companies that are building products saying, well, now it's the new AI version of our toothpaste and it's the new, AI version of our wallpaper. And you're just not seeing a lot of that here. So I think that's
Yeah.
a good thing. I think it's good that we're focusing on actual product, capabilities and what's going on and what the feature sets are, as opposed to some mythical we're with AI too. And the reason I'm saying it, which is really sad, is because it's different than the other conferences I went to this year. Where that mythical tagged on AI, bolted, Scotch tape, nailed, whatever it was, is what everybody was talking about on the show floor.
Well, so I've been monitoring the event from afar, and a couple names are popping up that some of them I'm not familiar with, some of them I know very well, but kind of surprised. Pexip keeps popping up. I want to talk a little bit about Pexip.
It's interesting. If you remember the earliest days of Pexip, which I do, the guys standing around in orange colored clown suits and orange pants and talking about how they had their bridge, which used to be a big hunk of iron on a little USB stick. That was an interesting personality, which for the most part they've abandoned. Quietly, they've become the go-to choice for the industry for interoperability. They were the first people to be able to tie Google Meet to other types of systems. They have the flexibility of connecting anything to anything. And now large players in the industry have given them a vote of confidence saying, we're not going to duplicate what these guys are doing. HP Poly offloaded their connectivity solution to Pexip early on. You had Avaya do it early this year. You had Cisco, which I want to be very clear about this because it ruffled a lot of feathers from like 9 different companies. I don't want to do that again. But Cisco doesn't have their interoperability with MTR working in the FedRAMP situation. They need more security clearance. They're going to build to do that, but they've said until we're in place, we're going to partner with Pexip to do that. And there's supposed to have been another announcement out at this show. I haven't seen it, so I don't want to reveal it. But suffice to say that another very large player in the collaboration space has said, you know what, I know we have interoperability through direct guest join and through our CVI and through other CVIs, but we're going to put Pexip on our platform as well because we think it's a better solution. Pexip supports dual screen, which the direct guest join and some of the other things don't. CVI has some limitations. So Pexip has slowly kind of moved its way into being the go-to choice for getting this interoperability working. And I think it's, kudos to them. They've done a really nice job.
Now, another company that I've seen pop up on LinkedIn is Barco, and Barco is, of course, an established incumbent in a lot of meeting rooms, but not particularly established in the meeting rooms context that we often talk about and so that seems to be kind of changing. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Barco had 3, I want to say, stunning announcements at the conference
Stunning.
that are also Microsoft stories. We've been talking, and we owe ourselves a conversation that we'll do in a couple of weeks around the whole MDEP situation and everything else. But one of the first announcements that they made is that that Barco has joined the MDEP platform, which you would say, wait a minute, Barco doesn't make an Android bar. Their bar is more of like a USB pass through, with their ClickShare device. MDEP is now going to be certifying more than just the video collaboration tool in the meeting room. They're certifying sharing devices and control devices and everything else. So the Barco ClickShare device, forget meetings, forget video, the Barco sharing device is going to be part of the MDEP platform. I do a really terrific interview with Dan Root, which will start showing on Monday when I get back and can edit everything, where he's describing that MDEP moved from the group that was working on it in Microsoft now under the Windows team. And it's going to become a way
Yeah,
of
you covered
managing
that in
security.
the Inside Report. I think it was 2 months ago. You
Mhm.
talked about, I can't remember the acronym, but MDEP was moving into another acronym at Microsoft. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I'm too much alphabet soup going through my head this morning to get that one accurate. But yes, it's interesting that we are now starting to see there was a big announcement from Microsoft yesterday that Barco has joined it with their ClickShare product. So the fact that MDEP is actually, after a couple of years of promises, being more heavily promised. And in fact, I'm told today when I visit one or two of the booths, I'll be able to actually put my hands on a device that's running on the MDEP platform. It's not shipping yet. We don't have prices on it yet, so it's closer. But again, we'll talk about that separately. But that was an amazing announcement that it's not just going to be for the video collaboration tools, which is what you think when you think Android operating system. It's going to be for everything in the meeting room. So it's one
Now,
of their.
as Microsoft's been talking about this MDEP and this Android solution, the two vendors that they keep talking about are Yealink and Jabra, but now Barco's getting all the attention. So is Yealink and Jabra showing MDEP products as well?
Microsoft had a press release out yesterday that specifically mentioned Yealink and talked about a bar that's being shown here on the floor that's running on MDEP, and they talked about Barco and ClickShare, and they specifically didn't talk about Jabra. So I'll be spending some time with the Jabra team today. The team there has promised me that they've got a device they're going to show me that's running MDEP, but they're very careful about how they want to say whether it's shipping or available or what the changes are. They weren't in the press release, so that's a
We
very
know,
interesting
we're very familiar with this dance about, you have to announce, you have to coordinate your announcements with Redmond very carefully, and that's not a unique thing to Jabra, but we never quite know when things are going to get announced by Microsoft, and I know
thing.
you've been through that on the vendor side as well. Um, all right, so let's go back through some other vendors,
Wait, before you go
but
on, there are two very important other points from Barco, very briefly.
okay.
They've joined Microsoft Shared Spaces initiative so that when you're using a BYOD strategy with one of their ClickShare bars, the Microsoft engine, the MTR Pro management will now work through the end user client on a user's PC to modify, to manage that USB peripheral. So instead of this invisible device that's in a room that you connect up to USB, it's now going to be trackable and monitorable through the end user client, which is an amazing thing that's a brand new way of looking at BYOD systems in
Yeah.
rooms. And the other thing that they have at the show floor, they're not being very loud about, but I find it stunning because a couple of the other manufacturers have announced that they're planning it, but they haven't done it. They are now going to allow ClickShare joined meetings to use the video camera in people's notebooks to add that into the meeting. So instead of some of the other vendors that are producing center of table options where you can have a device there to pick up people's faces when they're not looking at it, now if you have 10 people in a room and each one of them has their laptop, that's 10 cameras that can join the meeting. They're managing the audio, so there's no feedback coming from the device. They're managing all the pieces of it. That we've been talking about that for 5-6 years. When are we going to start to use all the cameras that are in the room? And Barco has come to market with a solution like that, or at least demonstrating that they will. So I mean, those are three really stunning things to come from a company like Barco.
Well, that's great, and I want to close the loop too on the Jabra thing. Because I want to tell our viewers that of course whatever the Jabra story is with MDEP will be covered thoroughly in the June Insider Report, which will publish at the end of the month or the first week of July. So I put you on the hook there. That you're going to cover that.
That's okay.
Let's see.
I'm interviewing them today, so we'll have them on camera on Monday with some of these answers.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so with some other vendors, how about D10? D10 pop up at all?
Yeah, D10 they introduced a while ago their Android video bar, which is the first one that actually can pivot, that rotates so that you can put it vertically between two displays, which solves an age-long problem in collaboration. Everybody in video knows that the camera needs to be at eye level of the participants. And we've been selling these devices for forever that have cameras above the screen or below the screen, or the screens have to be mounted higher so the camera's at the right level. They finally said, why aren't we putting the camera between the displays? And people love that, and they're buying into that. Now they've announced that that device is MTR certified. So they're doing MTR with it. And they're also allowing USB pass-through. So they've got Zoom and Teams, which are the two biggies on the Android platform, and they're on Android 12. And now you can use it as a pass-through as well. A lot of people are looking at that saying, that's a great solution.
So I just want to clarify, because technically you really could hang any video bar vertically. It's just that the video would be turned sideways, I guess.
Sideways, right. You'd
But,
see
but that
the
should
lady
just
in
be
the
a
pool.
software fix. That should just be a software fix. So you would think that the other vendors would update their software.
You would think so. I'm not exactly sure why that hasn't happened, because they're the only people on the market that are doing it.
All right. Well, that's
Although I have had private conversations with some of the bigger players in the industry saying they're not particularly going to create a video bar that goes between the displays, but they're working on cameras to mount between the displays. So I don't think that's the only one we'll ever see.
Let's see. There was a company I saw. I'm not familiar with them. You have to tell me who they are. Wolf something?
Wolf Vision. Wolf Vision is the product leader in document cameras, which is not a space that's got a huge enterprise applications, but it's a very powerful niche, certainly in education, certainly in labs and demonstration, where you have a product and you want to put it down and show people, and it's got an arm. It looks kind of like what an old overhead projector looked like, but it's a camera.
I remember those. Yeah.
And you can demonstrate things to people, and they've had that market for forever. Really powerful, big European company, and now they said, you know what, we're going to come out with a video bar, but it's going to be a different kind of video bar than everybody else has. It's going to be essentially a meeting room hub that allows for easy sharing. It's the first one that I've seen, and I could be wrong about this, but I've seen a lot of devices. It's the first one that's got a touch panel right in the middle of the bar, right under the camera. So you can do things like connect and mute and do all kinds of things right from the video bar. It doesn't need a separate control. They're doing wireless sharing. So if you bring in a device and you're on the network, you can share. And if you bring in a device and you're not on the network, you can use some of the public, AirPlay, Miracast, whatever options, and be able to share with the bar instantly. It's really interesting. And they've promised they're going to send me one probably first week of July. So that'll go on the TalkingPointz test bench, and we'll really be able to run it through its paces and show people what it's like. I was very impressed.
A new use case for those for that kind of camera is probably just emerging around the generative AI stuff, because the new OpenAI 4.0, they showed the multimodal where you could write things and the AI could see that. So that might be a whole new desktop category for these types of cameras. So
yeah, and we're starting to see it emerge, because the click share bar is one of the few that, again, it doesn't have Android built in, but it lets you connect wirelessly using their click share button. This bar will let you connect wirelessly without a dongle device. It comes in as part of the software in the system. So this is, or on the network. So I think we're starting to see that wireless connectivity be one of the emerging, features that's coming out into some of these USB type bars.
So we've talked about a couple different. We talked about MDEP, which is Microsoft. You talked about the D10 getting Microsoft certification. We haven't really talked much about Zoom or Cisco, either the vendors or their ecosystems. Did you have any updates to share on those?
Well, I'm hanging around with some of the Zoom folks today, so I'll try and get some updates from them. They've, from the distance, again, I haven't spoken with them yet. From a distance, it looks like they're really trying to support their partners here as opposed to making themselves the story. They did an interesting presentation with HP earlier, and they're really just trying to promote the whole ecosystem, because whoever's video bar you're getting, for the most part, you're working with Zoom on it for most of the exception to that is Cisco. Cisco has been in this town for 2 weeks. I mean, some people went home and came back, but they just did Cisco Live here. So most of the announcements that would have relevance to the show were part of Cisco Live, showing some of the new management capabilities of their system, showing how AI is not specifically an end user thing. Beyond that, it's now going to be something that organizations can use to help manage some of the endpoints. One of the points that they made when I chatted with them yesterday is that there are a lot more installations taking place now in remote locations where there isn't a technical support person. So what they've done with a lot of their systems is they've enabled enabled them to be remotely managed in a way that hadn't been done before. You can see what the touch panel is showing. You can see what the screen is showing. You can see what the camera is showing. And so a remote technician can go in and not just take over the device, which has always been capable, but now you can even see what the experience is that the end user have. So that means less technicians in remote offices and better management across the platform. So, and they've also made a point when I asked them, they did show a couple of new things under NDA to me, which obviously we're not going to talk about, but they made the point that, in October, when they do WebEx1, that's when the bulk of their announcements are going to come out in the space, some of the new pieces and some of what they're working on. So they've promised that it's going to be an interesting first week of October in Miami.
All right. Okay, so we've covered the meeting room pretty well. We'll just wrap up. Any thoughts about the show in general, or anything outside the meeting room you want to share?
Well, it's a very poorly experienced layout this year. The entire North Hall, if you're familiar with Las Vegas, is closed and under construction. So half of the conference is taking place in the Central Hall, and the other half of the conference is taking place in the West Hall, which is a good. They claim 10 to 15 minutes. I think it's more like a half hour to a 45-minute move back and forth. So most people are either forced to be in one hall all day or waste a lot of time going back and forth. I'm going to be in the West Hall when the exhibits are open for the first time on Friday. And that's where we're going to see, you're going to see a lot of players in the DV LED space, which is direct view, small LEDs in small pixel panels that you can now put anywhere. Think of like cloth that you could wrap around a column or just high quality video screens. These used to be very expensive and the price is plummeting and the applications are growing. So I'm going to certainly be talking to Planar and to Neoti and to a few of the other players in the space to really get a sense of what's going on in the display world. And then, there's some general audio-visual things going on. We had a couple of companies that are making mounts. One in particular, whose name Heckler, I think, has a stand. And one of the prominent AV users in the industry went online the other day and said, "I can't stand this because I can't mount the device where it needs to be. The whole screen needs to be about 40 inches higher." By the time he got to the show, they re-engineered it so it was 40 inches higher. So interesting, the power of social media around some of that stuff. And there are always like little pieces. I will always leave a show like this with a device I've never heard of, saying that's really cool. You can make it fit in the palm of my hand and do something. I'm all for that. So
All
a
right.
lot of other companies to see.
Well, just last thing. So this is our only live stream that we have at least planned for Infocom. How will people hear more from you about Infocom and your findings there?
So Monday we will have in the normal UC Weekly News platform, which is around 10 a.m. Eastern time everywhere. We will have a string, probably about an hour-long show, and hopefully a little less, of these 1, 2, 3-minute interviews with all the vendors, with them telling their top stories. I will say this as we put the video together, but I'm saying it again now. No one has been actively included or excluded from that. We sent out a mass number of emails. Do you want some coverage? The people who responded yes, those are the ones that are going to be on. The vendors who are not on that show either said no or didn't respond. So they'll be on Monday. Tuesday also, we're going to be premiering. We just did a whole review of the Crestron, who I'm speaking to today, their new video bar 70. So that'll come out on Tuesday. And then I think, you and I will probably have another conversation about some of the Microsoft press releases, some of the Cisco press releases at the show. I think MDEP involves a longer conversation about the pros that it brings to the industry and what Microsoft's really trying to accomplish, and maybe what's about under the covers and control and things like that. So let's assume you and I will do that sometime in the next couple of weeks.
And of course, the June Insider Report for subscribers of the TalkingPointz, they'll get a lot more details as well. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap up this conversation. Thanks so much for taking early morning time to present this to us and share your thoughts on. I guess it's only been one day, but keep us posted and have a great conference.
I will do that. Thanks, Dave. I'll see you soon.